I'm 75 years old. I had to get out of this trailer. It was making me sick. Now I'm living in my truck. Tonight I'm going to try to lay across this way because my leg's swelling so bad.
They just kept raising it, and I felt like I was losing control of my life.
Private equity's about the quick buck, everything else be damned.
The problem with the system now is greed.
So, urban, suburban, ex-urban, rural, do we have a housing crisis in America?
Yes.
You didn't even hesitate there.
No, I don't hesitate.
Republican or Democrat, nobody wants affordable housing in their backyard.
There's no life like being homeless.
The affordable housing crisis in America is a national issue. There's nowhere that is immune from it, but it's especially acute in places like Manhattan and big cities, where to my left you have public housing and right to my right, $6 million apartments for sale.
There might be disagreement on cause. There's certainly disagreement on solutions. But there's a unanimity of opinion that the United States is in the midst of a housing crisis. After 2 years of lockdowns and a faltering economy, an inflation rate creeping towards double digits, the cost of housing has exploded, with rent increasing 11% in 2021, and home prices a staggering 19% in a single year.
This building is asking for a 28% rent increase. Shame! Shame! Shame!
With the disappearance of regular stimulus checks and the federally mandated moratorium on evictions, for those on the margins of the American economy, the future looks grim.
This building was established for moderate and low-income housing. 28%. Nobody can get over that.
My income isn't going up. Social Security and the pension, they don't raise 28%.
New York has tried almost everything to alleviate this problem with limited success.
Over the past 10 years, the plan has financed construction and preservation of more than 130,700 affordable units.
This plan, over the next 10 years, will create opportunity for so many people who are currently being priced out of our city.
In the past 10 years, the New York City Housing Authority has processed 25 million applications for the housing lottery in a city of 8 million residents. But as anyone who's ever bought a Powerball ticket can attest, lotteries are an insufficient solution to an existential problem. Chris Mayer is an economist and professor of real estate at Columbia Business School. He spent most of his adult life studying the thus far ineluctable problem of affordable housing.
Market rates in New York City are never going to create a situation where affordable housing is going to be widely available. I mean, there's not a lot of land where you can build.
Not a lot of land, but you can build at density. Globally, cities are much more dense than they are in New York. And there are many places.
People don't want that, right?
Well, they say they don't
NIMBY,
want it.
right?
Then not in my backyard. Why is it that you look over there and you see all these really tall buildings?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we be able to build up higher here and in many parts of the city? Yes, we need some infrastructure, and we should put money into effective and efficient public transportation, but we need to be able to build more units because housing will not become less expensive. If New York is an attractive place to live, housing will not become less expensive unless we build more of it. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
On the continuum of affordable housing options in America, at the cheapest end is the humble trailer park, which, after years of negative associations, has been rechristened manufactured housing. They're inexpensive and often available to those with bad credit, and 6% of Americans live in one. There are, though, some downsides.
So we're pulling into the Schwartz Creek Estates, which is a mobile home park in Michigan that is now owned by a private equity firm, and people can't afford to stay in their houses. Holy fuck. Sorry.
I get that reaction a lot.
Are those?
Yes. So I keep tarantulas.
Holly Hook is the founder of Michigan Mobile Home Residence for Affordable Housing. She makes her living selling young adult ebooks on Amazon. Her niche is apocalyptic novels.
Give me an idea of what an apocalyptic book is.
Usually it's a group of survivors trying to survive like a major disaster, like an asteroid impact or a nuclear blast.
So this is comparatively not as bad. The situation you're in right now is not quite apocalyptic, right?
It's not quite apocalyptic. It's pretty bad, but it's not that bad.
While rents are increasing everywhere, what might sound like small increases in the manufactured housing sector, say $100, can be catastrophic for those on fixed incomes. And the necessary thing to remember with mobile homes is that if you own it, you still pay rent. That's because your mobile home isn't mobile. It's in a fixed position. And while you might own the structure on top of the land, someone else owns the land it sits on. 3 years ago, the Utah-based company Haven Park Capital bought Swartz Creek Estates where Holly lives.
July of 2018, they came in and put notices on our door saying, hey, we're Haven Park Capital. We just bought your community.
Okay. We bought your community.
Yes. We are pleased to acquire your community is how they worded it. Because, of course, they were pleased.
Yeah. Was anybody in the community pleased?
No, because they immediately put on a 22% rent increase for the slab of dirt fee.
Yeah.
Which is a good way to put it.
Yeah. And how much is a slab of dirt rental fee?
Well, when I started out, it was only $290 a month under the old owner.
That was in 2012?
That was in 2012.
That's a pretty good deal, though. So it's gone up from $290 to today.
The lot fee by itself is $416.
$416.
And there's other fees heaped on top of it now that used to be included in our rent. We have trash, sewer, we have a school tax, we have an admin fee after they took over billing us for water. It's been roughly a 55% increase in 3 years.
There's got to be some increase at some point, right? I mean, the rent has to go up. I mean, everything, the expense of everything goes up, inflation, et cetera. What do you think a reasonable rent would be, or a reasonable rent increase?
3% per year seems more reasonable. The previous owner, they did raise the rent a couple of times, but it was $10. And I think that happened once or twice in the 5 years before Haven Park came in.
Haven Park responded to our inquiry about increasing rents with a statement, saying they were necessary because they enabled us to make key community upgrades, add amenities, and cover rising cost inflation. In the period covering Holly's rent increase, Haven Park told us that their operating costs at Swartz Creek increased 59%, driven largely by property tax increases, payroll increases, and insurance increases. Haven Park has been in the news for similar rent increases at other parks across the country.
Haven Park Capital planned to raise the rent 69%.
But recently announced a new policy. It would not increase lot rents more than $50 in a year.
Who owns this park now?
Haven Park.
So this is a Haven Park Capital, or they call it something else now, right? Haven Park Bunnies and Fairies or something. It's something nicer.
Yes,
right?
we'll go. Yes,
I can't
Haven
remember
Park.
what it's. Haven Park Communities, but it used to be
Yes.
Haven Park Capital.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so what are the general complaints about Haven Park Capital in this community?
The general complaints are they're always raising the rent, constantly raising the rent. There's excessive fees, administration fees, trash, sewage fees, pet fees, even when you own your home.
Carol Johnson works as an organizer for MH Action, an activist group dedicated to building campaigns to protect the affordability and quality of manufactured housing communities and advance racial, economic, and gender justice. She's also a former mobile home owner whose last fixed address was a Missouri park managed by Impact Communities, one of the largest owners of manufactured housing parks in the country.
I was actually renting the home and I was renting the land. After about 4 or 5 months, the management came to me and offered me a rent option program where I could start purchasing the home.
So rent to own sort of thing, yeah.
Since I've done so good with renting, she wanted to offer me to purchase the home. She said it would be a lot cheaper. And so I took her up on her offer. After about 9 months into purchasing my home, I received a letter saying that they're not going to renew my lot lease. And I thought, well, they're not going to renew my lot lease because they're going to start another lot lease. And so I asked them about that, and they said, no, you have 90 days to move. And
So how the hell does that work that you're starting to own the home and then you can't rent the ground that the home is on?
I didn't know it at the time, how common it was.
Yeah.
Johnson says her lot lease was terminated, and she was subsequently evicted.
The court went in favor of Impact Community because on my lease, it said that I can end my lease or they can end my lease. And he went with Impact Community. He went in favor of them.
Not having the $5,000 it would cost to move her home, it was repossessed by the mortgage company.
So what they did was technically legal. If the court rubber stamped it, they're saying it's legal.
And so that's the laws that need to be changed to make that illegal for them to do that.
So where did you go after that?
I've been living in a hotel with my family since then. And so I am
Missouri?
considered homeless. I would never want anyone to go through what I'm going through. It's nothing.
There's a personal.
There's no life like being homeless.
One insider told me that a flurry of negative news stories has made the manufactured housing industry press shy, and our attempts to get people on the record seems to prove that. But one entrepreneur, Frank Rolfe, who runs a so-called university for potential mobile home park investors, has become the de facto public face in the gray eminence of the industry. And he has little problem saying what everyone knows to be true, but thinks impolite to say.
One of the big drivers to making money is the ability to increase the rent. If we didn't have them hostage, if they weren't stuck in those homes in those mobile home lots, it would be a whole different picture.
The subsequent press has not been kind to Rolfe.
Wow. Usually, when someone is that contemptuous of poor people, they're immediately visited by the ghost of Christmas future.
I asked Rolfe about these comments.
This is Frank.
Frank, this is Michael Moynihan from Vice. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Great. So you come into a lot of media focus because of the university. If I said, I want to take your course, how would you sell it to me that this is actually a great profit generator for me?
You know, we don't sell people on investing. What we do is we educate them, if they are going to invest, how to do it properly. The main attraction is people are betting on the fact that the lot rents will continue to go up probably for years to come.
I've talked to some people who say we were happy, maybe slightly dissatisfied with our previous owner, but when these big guys come in and they jack up the rent 30%, there have been, new charges for water that they didn't have to pay for before.
It doesn't matter what the item is. No one likes paying higher prices. Typically, 10% of the park is using more water with higher water charge than the entire lot rent. I've seen water charges as high as $500, $600 a month. They have no sense of conservation at all. The cost of water has gone up a lot. That, to me, does not seem in any way unjustified. I mean, almost every single park we've bought, we've literally brought the park back to life. And to make it worth doing, you have to raise the rent.
Do you really want to refer to people who are living in your parks as hostages?
Well, when I give a class, it's 30 hours. That soundbite is a few seconds of 30 hours.
I don't understand how it could be contextually any different if you say, if we didn't have them hostage, if they weren't stuck in the homes in the mobile home lots.
I certainly do not believe customers are hostages, and if that offends anyone, I apologize for offending them, but no one at that class came away from that thinking any different than these are the customers, and they're not hostages. We don't tie them up or anything like that. So that's not in any way correct. I don't think anyone actually would think that.
The word mobile is a misnomer. It is not a mobile home. I thought they must be cheap to move. They're not cheap to move at all. So again, I liked that.
Do you mind not being liked?
We are liked by our customers. The rents had doubled, but their quality of life had gone up infinitely because they had roads that were paved and working water and sewer and a nice office and a nice entry and new signage. So it all comes back to value. The majority of the residents are thrilled with that. So we're liked by our customers, but we're just kind of not liked by the media. One thing that the media never gets right on that whole concept is mobile home park people have a very real option that no other housing people have, not houses, not condos, not anyone. I mean, the options are they can sell the house if they're unhappy. They can sublease it if they're unhappy. They can obviously walk off and abandon it. But the fourth item is any mobile home park owner in the U.S. will happily pay to move anyone who's unhappy's home from one park to their park. It costs about $5,000 to move a mobile home, and probably every single park owner out there, with the exception of some moms and pops, will happily pay that bill.
They have the ability to not extend your lease on your property, depending on how you're treating your property. Even though I own my house, I could be evicted if I'm not following whatever their guidelines are. There's really no security. They can say at any time, hey, you gotta go. But they're really not movable, especially if you have decks on them and everything else. It's pretty expensive.
I don't have $10,000 to move this.
That's what it costs.
And I can't afford to sell it because I can't afford to fix it.
It's a pretty incredible sentence. I can't afford to sell it. So how much was the trailer when you bought it?
They sold it to me for $19,900. That's an 86 trailer. That trailer's only worth about $5,000 to $6,000.
Grover Canine is a 75-year-old retired welding instructor and maintenance worker. He spent the last few months living out of his truck.
Every time I come here, I see this and it hurts. My whole life's in this 10 by 20 shed.
So you've been living in your truck for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Which is better than living in the trailer.
Yes, to me it is. The trailer that I was in was full of black mold. The furnace would come on, it was like I was strangling, I couldn't breathe. And the more I investigated it, the more I found out what was wrong with the trailer.
Who owned the park when you bought the trailer?
The group that owned it is called Impact. They don't take care of anything. Most of these trailers are 10, 15 years old or older. They buy them from someplace down south.
And that's the company?
Yep.
Impact?
Yes.
So they sold you...
That's true. The piece of shit.
Piece of shit?
Yeah.
Contractually, is it their problem? Like when you sign up to live there, do they have any obligations?
At the time I bought the trailer, they told me it was okay.
You didn't have an inspection?
No, because I moved in the wintertime, and they told me the trailer's fine, there's nothing wrong with it.
Neither Impact nor the park manager has responded to our request for comment. Two of Canine's neighbors said they saw the mold in Grover's home, and that they too had similar problems because of recent flooding. But one of Grover's neighbors said Impact had made improvements, including fixing some of the park's roads and a bus stop.
Well, Michigan Mobile Home Residents for Affordable Housing is, first of all, an informational website about Haven Park. We found out that Bellwether Enterprise, who's a subsidiary of Enterprise Community Partners, the big nonprofit housing company, they were actually financing Haven Park's buy-up of our communities. And so far as we know, they still...
Tangled web we weave.
Yes.
So they're a nonprofit.
Yeah, a big affordable housing nonprofit, from what I understand.
They're an affordable housing nonprofit. Affordable and nonprofit are the two key phrases there that are funding a large finance capital group to buy homes and raise rent.
Yes.
If I'm following that right, that seems something illogical about that, but it's happening.
I believe it's quite illogical too.
Illogical, but typical. A well-intentioned government program requiring Fannie and Freddie to better serve families in the manufacturing home market, a contribution to mitigating the housing crisis, is taken advantage of by those who, while doing nothing illegal, are already cash flush and using the low-interest loans to acquire more parks faster.
Residents like Ms. Hook were left with an impossible choice: abandon the home they own with nowhere to go, with literally nowhere else to take their home, or pay rent, or try to pay rent they can't afford.
Holly's agitating attracted the notice of Senate Housing Committee Chair Sherrod Brown, who invited her to testify.
Both Fannie Mae and Enterprise claim they advance affordable housing, but when they finance predatory investors like Haven Park, they destroy it.
Neither Fannie Mae or Bellwether responded to our request for comment. Enterprise Community Partners told Vice News in a statement that the business of manufactured housing requires both policy and capital solutions to protect residents and make sure that speculative developers don't buy up those homes.
How is Fannie and Freddie involved in your business?
They have been the bedrock to many of these older properties being brought back to life. And as a result of them doing that, people have the confidence to go in and buy mobile home parks with them financing them.
So is it fair to say that the government is subsidizing some of these purchases?
It's a regular loan, but the industry has such a poor stereotype that many lenders won't make loans on mobile home parks. So Fannie, Freddie bridge that gap.
Let me just put it in simple terms. Like, you're a guy that has money coming in, taking money from poor people. And, it doesn't matter as long as the economy is going south.
The need for affordable housing grows exponentially, regardless of politicians or really anything. Single-family homes in California are $1,000 a square foot. That's not affordable. And so home prices just don't make any sense. And as a result, people get stuck. They can't buy stick-built homes. Apartment rents are insane. That's what fuels the demand for affordable housing.
So you think there are bits of legislation, on a state level
that you think would be beneficial?
You have to define what beneficial is. You're not going to be able to hold back the force of the market when it comes to rents. I mean, you can try rent control, but it hasn't stuck almost anywhere in the 100 years.
And due to the ever-increasing demand for houses and apartments, all rents have been frozen to prevent profiteering.
During World War II, the federal government introduced wage and price controls and large-scale rent control. The instinct of a lot of people is rent control.
So in the trailer parks where you have people who own the structure on top of it, I think rent control is a pretty reasonable solution given that situation.
So this is a targeted rent control, right? That would be if you own something that is on top of somebody else's land, they cannot just basically torture you to death. And
Yes.
tell you, because you'd be forced to move out and you can't take that with you.
Exactly. That problem is one of the examples of ways that, low-income people in this country get taken advantage of. That to me is a great place where you'd sort of say rent control really works.
What about writ large? I mean, in the country as a whole, is rent control a viable solution outside of that very one specific example of trailer parks?
The downside of rent control is it reduces people's willingness to build stuff. The trade-off you have to make is, how do I figure out ways to keep people from being ripped off? But how to allow the market to work to allow people to build more housing? And the way to get more housing to me is, instead of saying we have a fixed amount of housing, and what we're going to do is not let anybody raise rents on it. So we just build these bigger and bigger and bigger lists of people who want to get into the housing. And that's not a good solution. The solution instead ought to be to make housing more affordable.
And while economists tend to agree on very little, there is something approaching a consensus that rent control hasn't produced the desired results and was abandoned in liberal enclaves like Berkeley, California, and Cambridge, Massachusetts. We are a country that has an inequality problem. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
How do we house poor people?
Make it a heck of a lot easier to build immediately. And I would put tens of billions of dollars into vouchers at the federal level to help.
Tens of billions of dollars.
Yes. We have to have a way to sort of allow new people coming in, whether they're young people, whether they're families, whether they're immigrants, and people who are coming in new to a market, and to give them the ability to buy and live in affordable housing, which is the things that our parents had the ability to do. If we want societies that people can afford, we have to build them.
Here you might expect something approximating a conclusion, wherein I condemn villainous landlords and defend virtuous tenants, followed by a pretty simple fix for a housing crisis that has eluded local and state governments for centuries, but that I've solved in 30 minutes. These stories are never so simple, the virtue and villainy never evenly distributed. Stories are often complicated by bad personal and economic decisions, worsened by a broken system, compounded by landlords motivated by a bottom line. But perhaps this too is wildly oversimplified. Short of the government taking over the housing market and somehow solving the problem of stagnant wages, the landlords and mortgage brokers servicing low-income clients are necessary and will always be motivated by profit. But therein is not where the housing crisis lies. If anything, as Christopher Mayer suggests, we need more housing, which means more mortgages and landlords, and we need higher wages and better jobs. And then we've fixed it. Easy, right?
Right here's where Sadie and I stay.
How do you get out of this situation?
I'm hoping for a miracle.
You don't see any obvious way out of this right now.
I've thought about suicide. I've thought about it, to be honest with you. I've been talking to people, and that's helped. Just like talking to you now. That takes some of the pressure off.
I'm Michael Learmonth, editor-in-chief of Vice News. Too often, traditional news outlets shy away from the real stories and experiences of those living through global conflicts. Not Vice News. Our reporters are on the ground, fearlessly covering the human stories that shape our world. You and millions of others can continue to read, watch, and listen to Vice News for free. But we hope you'll consider making a one-time or ongoing contribution of any size at vice.com/contribute. Every contribution, no matter how big or small, helps support the journalism Vice News brings to you every day. Thank you.